About a year ago, my colleague Orly Ashenfelter and I wrote an article exposing this practice. It's not only fast food chains, also car repairs, hotels, other franchises have this kind of practice. It would be clearly illegal if they were completely separate firms. Firms are not allowed to get together and collude to agree not to hire each other's workers or to collude on pay. This falls in a gray area. The fast food chains say that the franchisees are independent businesses. They say they're not a joint employer, yet they have this collusive practice. And when we wrote our study, there was an article about it in the New York Times, and several attorney generals from various states contacted us. The attorney general of Washington state has been the most effective, and he worked together with McDonald's. He, I think, probably using Washington state law as well as federal law, argued that the practice was illegal. McDonald's is being sued by some of their employees who tried to move from one job to another and were denied the opportunity. And the workers are not even aware about these clauses. It's not as if this is a non-compete agreement where the worker was a party to the agreement, might have gotten something in exchange for it. This happens behind the scenes. Anyhow, Bob Ferguson, the Attorney General in Washington State, managed to get about 16 fast food franchises to drop the practice nationwide.
They may drop it, but will that actually end the practice? Because you may say that this no longer exists at the corporate level, but is that going to mean that a manager who's looking and says, I'm not hiring you, you're coming from another McDonald's 5 miles away?
Well, it's in the manager's interest to actually make the hire, because the manager has a vacancy and here's a worker who's got the training to do the job. Right. And I think this is emblematic of what's going on more broadly in the economy. The job market has been improving, unemployment rates down below 4%. I had been predicting faster wage growth. I thought we would see wage growth above 3% by now, 4% by now. It's inching up. That's good that it's improving. But I think we should be seeing faster wage growth. Historically, we would see faster wage growth in the conditions that we face.
So you think it's these artificial things that are...
And I think these anti-competitive practices, non-competes, and just the fact that workers have less bargaining power. I think there are scars still from the recession.
People should look at the speech you gave in Jackson Hole this week, which lists, sorry, last month, which lists all the reasons that are out there that are perhaps keeping wages from going up relative to how tight the job market is. And now I think what we should do is do something that's unprecedented, which is take an off-the-record Jackson Hole conversation and put it on the record. I walked up to you at Jackson Hole with my Diet Coke in my hand, and I said, Alan, you were wrong. They're coming back to the workforce. And you said?
I said, the workforce has been stable. If you look at labor force participation rate as a whole, it's perfectly flat over the last 4 years. Now, prime age workers have been raising their labor force participation rate. That's been offset by an aging workforce. So we're not getting enough of a return to the workforce to offset the forces that are going to be in play for the next 2 decades.
So there's the who's in the labor force. You could see that tick up there in the age 20. And that's mostly men coming back, Alan, or is it women?
Well, first it was women. Now it's men as well as women. There's been a little bit more recovery of men. By the way, there's another thing, Steve, underlying that picture. We talk about it as coming back.
Right.
If we look at people who are out of the labor force, there's not been an increase of people who are out of the labor force coming back. It's mostly people staying longer. It's mostly people not leaving the labor force.
So the NLF to LF, the not in the labor force into the labor force, that's not a big deal?
Well, it's actually declined over the last 5 years.
In other words, fewer people coming back.
It's actually fewer people coming back. It's fewer people leaving.
Those guys who were out, the 15% of men those age who were out, they're not going to get another skill set or another chance. They're just going to kind of age out of the system and move down like you would like a pig through a snake? Or is that what you're...
It's I think, a very difficult challenge.
What a metaphor, Becky.
That's like the lost generation of guys who...
It's a big snake.
It's not a generation. It's been several generations because labor force participation for men has been trending down for the last 30, 40 years. And it's about 11%, 12% of men who are out of the labor force. One of my studies, I found that almost half of them are taking pain medication every day. Right. I think that's part of the opioid crisis that we're facing. Right. So I think they face many challenges when it comes to coming back to the labor force.
If wages were to go up, which relates us to the first part of the conversation, more strongly, could they come back in? I think people are at home and a little bit exasperated. What's it going to take? A 3.9% unemployment rate, you pretty much have decent wage growth, more decent than it's been. What will it take to get folks back to work who are not part of the labor force now?
I think you've got different groups that you have to focus on. So for women, I think employers have to offer more flexible work. Many of the women who are out of the labor force are taking care of families, they have household responsibilities, and they report that they're content with their lives. That's not all women, but that's many of the women. And if you look where the U.S. lags behind other countries, labor force participation of women is now relatively low, and we used to be among the highest in the world. For men, I think it's a different set of issues. For men, I think it has to do with the change in the skills that are in demand.
Anything to do with some of the entitlements just being a little bit too generous and making it, easier to stay home than to get up in the morning and get childcare and get transportation and, put on a suit and everything else. I mean, maybe is there anything to that? I mean, I'm so with you on the poaching thing. That's horrible. That's, it's bad enough that you can't get restaurant entry-level positions above $8 an hour. So they're even not letting you go somewhere else where you might get it.
You can't go. It's Joe.
And that makes it so that you should. That makes people want a minimum wage when there shouldn't have to be a minimum wage, because there ought to be competition for people to go wherever they want. But
this gets to an issue I've been pounding the table about for a long time, which is, we can talk about federal regulation, and that's important, but so many of the things that inhibit people and business formation and job formation is at the state level. And that has to be addressed from, in some states you need more hours of training to be a cosmetologist than a registered nurse.
Well,
those are the sort of things that prohibit entry.
Licensing is
terrible.
But let me get to Joe's point, because I think it's a very good one. When it comes to men,
Alan.
not.
Thanks, Alan.
I think it's a legitimate point. Maybe half of the men who are out of the labor force are on some type of a support program. They're usually not very generous. Disability insurance is the largest one.
Right.
And I think we need to look about how we can make disability insurance
definitely
interact more with work.
It's abused to some extent.
Does that overlap, though, with the same half who are using pain?
It certainly overlaps with those who are taking pain medication. And it also overlaps with the problem we've had with wages in general, because they're not living great lives when they're on government support.
Right.
So the fact that wages have fallen so much for less skilled workers, I think, is part of the picture.
Alan,
as well.
we're out of time. 15 seconds. Are we running out of workers?
I think we're getting to a point where the job market is very tight. I don't think we're ever going to run out of workers, because the population is still growing. We do have an inflow. But I think we're going to see more pressure in the job market, assuming that the recovery continues.